lovely people, my name is Emma and today I'm doing some recommendations videos for the readathon Springathon that I'm going to be co-hosting. So Springathon is a nature inspired readathon that happens for the first 2 weeks of May, and the idea is to read non-fiction, specifically nature writing and natural history, and this year we've got some kind of slightly more flexible, fluid, creative prompts. So what I've done is I've grabbed a fiction and a non-fiction for the first 4 prompts for this video, and then the next video coming out will be the other 4 prompts. If you absolutely no idea what I'm on about, I'll link everything down below. Please do go check it out and feel free to join in. And if you just want to stick around, you're not taking part of Springathon, but you want to hear about some really cool nature writing and nature inspired fiction, then please do. You are more than welcome. I've tried really hard this year to try and only pick books that are ones that I've read since Springathon last year, so that way I'm not like doubling up on recommendations videos from last year. So do feel free to check out all the content from last year, where I do recommend a bunch of other books that I've read previous to kind of the last 12 months, because there should be some really good recommendations in there as well. The first prompt is migration / home. We're doing kind of dual prompts connected together, and for the prompt of migration, the non-fiction I want to recommend is Sea People: The Puzzle of Polynesia by Christina Thompson. This is a look at how did the Polynesian people get to the islands where they were, the very early hominids, and then what did they do since they were there, what is kind of the climate and the ecology like, but also what is the interaction with the various Western civilizations that have kind of invaded and had points of contact, and the various ways that the Western world has understood Polynesia in general. It's really incredible, really detailed, and covers a huge range of different kinds of ways of studying people. There's some really fascinating things looking at like tracking linguistic traits across the islands. There are some really interesting examples of people attempting to mimic various technology that would have been available then to see whether they could have potentially travelled or not, but it also does cover a huge amount of the nature and sort of the natural ecosystems of the islands, and the way that islands can shape the way that animals kind of evolve. So really fascinating, a fantastic book for both history and also nature. For fiction, I wanted to recommend Herland by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. This is another story of kind of a group of people meeting up with a civilization that has been left untouched for a very long period of time. It's about 3 American explorers who find like a forbidden area, I think in the Amazon, which is exclusively a society made up of women, and they have managed to evolve in such a way where they do not need men for reproduction, and it is about what would that society look like, and how do these 3 men who kind of are introduced into it, how does that shake things up, how does that change their understanding. It's a real kind of classic, iconic early feminist fiction text. I think it's really fantastic, very funny in places, and it is really interesting seeing how more early feminist thought envisaged the concepts of kind of gender, men and women, and what they consider to be sort of a utopia, because it's really interesting to see how social ideas have kind of evolved and changed over the years as well. So really good fun, definitely a hidden gem. And this one also has the yellow wallpaper in it, which is a short story that is also connected loosely with a little bit of nature, so would be worth checking out. For home, I'm recommending one of my all-time favourite nature writing memoirs, and that is Waterfalls of Stars by Rosanne, Alexandre. This is my 10 years on the island of Skoma, and Rosanne made the island of Skoma her home for a decade because her and her husband were the wardens of the island. The island of Skoma is off the coast of the UK, and it's a big nature reserve. It's protected, but it does need a warden to do various kind of counting things, scientific stuff, etc, etc, and that was where Rosanne and her partner came in. So it's total isolation, and it's also, she lived there very kind of pre the sort of the days of the internet and things like that. It's really not hooked up to a lot of stuff, so it's just a wonderful, lovely exploration of the island's nature and her experiences living on there. It's a little bit meandering in places, it's a little bit kind of disjointed in places, but it's really beautiful, and it's so much fun just sitting and reading about puffins and baby seals and some of the storms that they went through, and it's wonderful. It was a read from Springathon last year, and it's fantastic. For home, I actually have 2 different options from John Wyndham, both of which are quite similar stories but with just like a slightly different twist, and that's Kraken Waits and The Day of the Triffids. The Day of the Triffids is definitely John Wyndham's most well known, but Kraken Waits is fantastic and I think slightly better in my opinion. But these both are books where some kind of alien life force tries to make Earth its home, That's my connection, and both of them have a very kind of nature inspired vibe to them. So Day of the Triffids is about plants that have a bit of an uprising and try and take over, and then the Kraken is about these sort of gelatinous aliens who land and then go very deep into the sea, and there's sort of theories about them only being able to withstand certain levels of pressure, so we never fully get to see them, but there's a very kind of aquatic, deep sea, what's down there, kind of tapping into those real primal fears. I love John Wyndham. He's a really iconic sci-fi writer from the like 50s, 40s, 60s-y kind of area. Most of his work is very like inspired by nature and is very kind of prescient and sort of predicts quite a lot of stuff. He's incredibly accurate, and yeah, I just both really enjoy them. I think if you're a fan of kind of post-apocalyptic fiction, both of these are really iconic. So it's just whether you want to read about plants or like weird octopus people. Your pick. Okay, the next one is a little bit of a stretch. We're talking about Bloom and Decay. And for Bloom, I have Dinosaurs Rediscovered by Michael J Benton. All about the blooming new scientific area of paleontology. Shut up, it counts. I will have one about plants in a second for you, I promise. So this is about how a scientific revolution is rewriting history, and essentially paleontology is, and probably quite a few areas of science, but I read mainly paleontology, is really having a bit of a boom over the past kind of 2 decades or so, mainly with the rise of things like more computing power and the internet being able to share resources and being able to dedicate far more computing power to crunching hard numbers, and how it's really changed from a kind of natural history to a real scientific area of discovery and inquiry, where we can really rigorously test things about what was going on the planet like millions of years ago, which if you stop and think about the fact that we can know these things, it is mind-blowing and incredible. So this book is looking at the real cutting edge of the various scientific techniques that are being used to explore different areas. It talks about the likelihood of finding, you know, dinosaur DNA. Could we ever actually have a Jurassic Park? It talks about some of the ways that massive computing power and statistical probability has meant that we've been able to better understand and change how we understand family trees of dinosaurs, which really helps to inform us for evolution, and it's also led to the kind of confirmation of the theory that dinosaurs then evolved into birds. There's all sorts of other stuff in here. It's really jam-packed full of information. If you know absolutely nothing about dinosaurs beyond like the Jurassic Park movies, this is not a good place to start, but if you're like me and you do like dinos, this book is fantastic, and I think it would pair really nicely as well with the Audible mini-series The Grown-Up Guide to Dinosaurs, which is very accessible. So if you're someone who again knows nothing about dinos, maybe start with that and then move on to this if you have an Audible account. Unfortunately, that one is an Audible exclusive, which is a real shame because it is fantastic. So yeah, so the blooming new field of dinosaur inquiry. If you actually want a plant book, which is kind of what the Bloom prompt is probably aiming you for, totally check out Lab Girl by Jahren. This is one that I did recommend last year, which is why I wanted to chuck in the dino book as well, and it's fairly well known in kind of non-fiction nature writing circles, but it is the memoir of Jahren, who is a scientist who specialises in paleobotany, and it is a combination of a conversation about her love of plants and some information about plants, but also a look at her career and how it's developed over the years. And it's a real kind of stark, very honest memoir. It's fantastic. It's hugely hyped up on BookTube in the kind of non-fiction world, and she has got another book out now which is about the climate crisis that I've heard only good things about and was a firm favourite on people's TBRs last year for Springathon, so maybe check that one out as well. If Hope's written it, I'm sure it's good. For my fiction prompt for Bloom, I have Rosewater by Tade Thompson. This is a fantastic sci-fi series that's set in kind of a futuristic Nigeria, where an alien dome has landed on the planet and then kind of set up, and there's something very strange where it can heal people, it can bring the dead back to life, and there's something to do with kind of plants and spores and kind of fungal sort of things, and anybody who's got like latent psychic powers, it also kind of awakens them and sort of amplifies them. So the main story follows our main character, who kind of works for a fairly shady branch of the government that uses these kind of psychic abilities. The first book is a little bit confusing. There's a lot of jumping around in timelines. It's kind of throwing you in at the deep end and expecting you to sort of pick up the world building. It is a trilogy, and I have read book 2, and I think it definitely does improve a little bit with book 2, but I always love a book 2 in a trilogy, and the kind of plant side of things definitely becomes more apparent in book 2 as well. But it's a really cracking read. If you're a big fan of sci-fi, you probably know about it already. It's wonderful. And the last prompt for this particular video is going to be Decay, and and I couldn't possibly not mention The Ends of the World by Peter Brannen, which is all about life on planet Earth decaying over and over and over again. This book covers the 5 major mass extinction events that Earth has gone through since it kind of first formed, and it looks at what life was like before and directly after. So naturally you have the extinction of the dinosaurs, which was the last major extinction event that the Earth went through, but there have also been 4 more pre that, including one that kind of basically cleared the playing field for the dinosaurs to be able to evolve into the kind of real superpowers on the planet that they were. This book really broadened and kind of widened my eyes of like how much of paleontology I enjoy outside of just the dinosaur kind of era, and just how weird and wonderful and incredible life on Earth has been over the years. It's really got some freaky stuff in here. It also covers things like, you know, when trees first started to evolve, when seeds and then flowers did, and how that really impacted, you know, plant life on animal life. And also, naturally, you can't be talking about mass extinction events, which often focus on the carbon cycle and Earth warming, without talking about the current climate crisis that we are actually in. So it is very good if you are somebody who is interested in that, or kind of environmental reasons in general. And then the final book I'm recommending for this video is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. This is an absolutely glorious historical fiction set in Mexico in, I think, the 1950s? Look at that, 1950s. Well done, Emma. Good memory. This is about Noemi, who her cousin has just married into a very strange family who live in this big kind of old house on top of the hill and kind of keeps themselves. And then one day Noemi gets a letter from her cousin saying that they're trying to poison her and can she please come and save her. So Noemi goes to the house but then gets ensnared in this family's kind of dark secrets and twisted past. And I can't really explain to you why it fits really well with the prompt of decay and plants without ruining some stuff. But let's just say things get freaky and very cool very, very quickly. So this is a must if you're into like kind of plant horror type stuff. I love Silvia Moreno-Garcia. I think she's a fantastic author. This book has been well deservedly hyped all over BookTube and has won a bunch of prizes, so definitely check it out. It's fantastic, and I think would be a kind of lighter, slightly easier read if you are reading a lot of non-fiction over Springathon. So those are my suggestions for the first 4 prompts of Springathon. Like I said, please do check out the next video that should be coming out in the next couple of days, where we'll talk about the other 4 prompts of Springathon. And do let me know in the comments down below if you're going to be reading any of these for Springathon, if you're joining in, if you've read any of them before, and if you have any recommendations for these particular prompts. Like I said, I've got tons of Springathon content from last year that's all still totally valid. I still stand by all of those books, so please do check them out as well. I'll link everything down below and in the cards, and you know how YouTube works by now. Have a wonderful reading week, and I will chat to you soon. Bye!